What is happening out there, Roto Scouts basketball fans? Welcome to a Monday show, gang. A little bit of a late start today. Just had a lot to get through. There's 11 games on the hockey slate today, and I had to get a bunch of line changes updated over the last couple of days. A lot of moving parts on the NBA slate that needed to be caught up with and dealt with through the afternoon. Single game Monday night slate for football. Hopefully everybody out there had a better football day than I did yesterday. Not a pretty day for me, but projections for if you were on the right spots, you were definitely all right. And then just a few kind of key players just not coming through that were at pretty decent exposures, but just stunning underperformances by a few guys. Just shot me in the foot. But hopefully back at it tonight with some good NBA. It looks like a solid slate. We've got 9 games on FanDuel, 7 games on DraftKings. And again, bunch of moving parts. There's already crazy value on the board. I'm actually rerunning the Sims in the background here. Just the way it came up, I've still got it loaded into the sheet here. The way it came up, the reason I wanted to do it was this. I feel like I had Desmond Bain, and when I went into the projections model, I realized that I hadn't double-checked his rate, and I spot-check every single player every single day, and just somehow skipped over him as I was doing that, and his rate was kicked up too high. So I just cut him back down to a normalized projection, and I'm rerunning it. It's basically only because of him, probably just some minor changes. So you can see some of the, as far as the guys on both sites, we've got some significant pieces. One of them's named Spencer Dinwiddie. One of them's named Robert Williams. One of them's named Musa Diabate. PJ Washington's coming up as a solid mid-range piece. A lot of missing parts that are supporting some of the upside for some of those guys, and then that's leading directly to some of the stars at high ownership. So we're just waiting on the Sims to finish up in the background, but that'll give us a good chance to go through Vegas. We'll talk about the questionables and everybody. For that, we'll say hi. Cujo's here. Hope your Monday's going well too, pal. I'm going to lose till I win the millies here. What's going on, man? Good to see everybody. Solid day yesterday outside of the NFL results. It was a fun time. We had our fake Thanksgiving, so I was doing everything remotely yesterday while enjoying some turkey and a couple beers and everything, a bunch of old friends. Always a good time. So hopefully you guys had good weekends as well. Hopefully the week hasn't been off to too bad a start. Short week with the holiday and everything. We'll deal with holiday schedules as we get into it. But check out rotoscouts.com. Projections under $1 a day for NBA, NHL, NFL. Access to all those things. And pull up the Vegas board here. Talk through the setup of the slate real quick. And we'll go from there. Magic and the Hornets. Magic favored by 5 on the road in Charlotte. Charlotte missing yet another big man. It should be a feast for Orlando and basically whatever they want to do, but we definitely have some value plays coming through on the Charlotte side, as well as top-end players. So a lot to work with there. Obviously, we want to get our shares of Franz. It's going to be an interesting one. 213.5 point total isn't exactly favorable, but I think just with the value and the upside players in that game, I think we can get there. New Orleans at Indy. New Orleans getting some pieces back. Indy favored by 6.5. Game has a 225.5 point total. It's a reasonable expectation that we'll see guys coming through in their at least typical roles. The Raps, the Pistons favored by 5 in a home game, 221.5 point total in that one. We're definitely going to see some odds and ends from them coming through as well. No Cade Cunningham again. Probably not going to see much Raptors. Top of my head, I don't remember anybody that should be crashing the top of the board, but we'll see what it looks like. That was 2 hours ago that I put the projections together, and I've gone through like 500 NHL players in between, so forgive me if the memory is a little bit short. Dallas and Atlanta, definitely ton of value crashing the top of the board with Dallas. Atlanta favored by 3.5 in a home game, 235.5 point total there. No Luka again. Missing pieces galore for the Dallas side is driving guys like Spencer Dinwiddie up to the top of the board. So we'll see what we get there, but definitely already sources of value, and more might even emerge, or more might consolidate around those guys. The Clippers in Boston. Boston 10.5 point favorites, 217.5 point total there. Several big men out for Boston, but Kristaps Porzingis returning. Got him just in like mid-teens minutes. That's my expectation right now, as they just kind of ease him back in. But it at least kind of covers that gap, so we're not going to get, I don't think, the crazy value from Boston today. Mediocre total, but definitely usable pieces, especially from the top-end guys in that game. Portland at Memphis. This one's another mess. 232.5 point total. Memphis favored by 10.5. As I said, I'm rerunning with Bain's projection getting corrected. Ja Morant is going to play, but we don't exactly know what to expect from a minutes perspective, but he's very cheap. So we'll see how he comes up. But a juicy total there. Memphis favored by 10.5. The Knicks in Denver is an interesting one. 233.5 point total. Knicks are 3.5 point dogs. Karl Anthony Towns been questionable all day. That's one to watch. Miles McBride also questionable for the Knicks. Jokic looks pretty tremendous in that original sim. We'll see how he came up in the rerun, but it shouldn't be that much difference. There's a lot of money to pay for stars on this slate. And then the two FanDuel games, OKC at Sacramento. Sacramento 3.5 point dogs at home, 227.5 point total there. Malik Monk coming back in a little bit of a twist. And then the Nets and the Dubs, Warriors favored by 12.5 in a home game, 224 point total in that one. Definitely going to see some odds and ends, though, from both sides of that one. Kenny Woodhouse, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you. Appreciate everybody who's here. I know there's other shows going on right now, so everybody who chooses us, little extra space in my heart. So let's go through updates that came out during the afternoon. Cade Cunningham confirmed out. Ja Morant confirmed will play. Kyrie downgraded to questionable. Quentin Grimes doubtful. Malik Monk coming back. Dennis Schroeder questionable. Noah Clowney is out. Trenton Watford is probable. Several of those were not on the early injury reports on due to back-to-backs and so on. Probables. CJ McCollum, in addition to the guys I just mentioned, CJ McCollum, Yves Missi, Kristaps Porzingis, Peyton Watson. Questionables, Brandon Ingram, Johnny Furphy, Miles Turner, Wendell Carter Jr., Jalen Suggs. So a couple key pieces there for the Magic. Klay Thompson is another interesting, questionable that could come off the board and just create. That's what I was saying about like consolidation of opportunity there. Jeremy Grant, Scoot Henderson, Ja Morant, Miles McBride, Karl Anthony Towns, and Isaiah Joe. And we did get the news that Ja Morant intends to play. And then outs, it's a long list. A lot of similar to previous slates, but Jose Alvarado, Herb Jones, Carlo Malkovich, DeJounte Murray, Zion Williamson remain out for the Pellies. Isaiah Jackson, Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, Ben Shepard, James Wiseman are all out for Indy. Paulo Banchero, Miles Bridges, Daquan Jeffries, Trey Mann, Nick Richards, Grant Williams, and Mark Williams. So there's the big men for the Hornets. Bruce Brown, Grady Dick, Kelly O, Emmanuel Quickly, some missing pieces for the Raps. Jacoby Walter, Cade Cunningham, Luka Doncic, Dante Exum, Cody Zeller, Mo Bamba, Kawhi Leonard, Norm Powell, PJ Tucker, Al Horford's doubtful, Luke Cornett's doubtful, DeAndre Ayton's doubtful. Donovan Klingen's out, which creates the Time Lord value for Portland. Matty Thybulle remains out. Zach Edey, G.G. Jackson, Vince Williams Jr. are all out. Precious Achiuwa remains out. Vlatko Konkar, Aaron Gordon both out. DeAnthony Melton, Alex Caruso, Usmani Deng, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen with a Y all remain out. And that's it. Let's see if those sims are done running. They should be by now. Oh, yeah. Let me grab these and we'll drop them in. So here, let's... So this is where we were. And we'll see what the difference is. Again, it essentially just amounted to me correcting the rate that I had in there originally on Bane. But let's grab the new results. This is DK. A really decent, what was it, Saturday? I didn't play basketball yesterday, being remote, but decent Saturday. Another day with a couple top 1%ers that didn't quite get where we needed them to be, but a solid just across the board cash, and some decently high cashes with the top 1%ers. So it was a nice day. Whoops, that was the DK one. Right, yeah, it's DK 7 games. Again, if you're just getting here, we have separate slates. Once again, all 9 games are on the FanDuel slate, just 7 on the DraftKings slate. I am just reloading the sims, and then we're going to dive in. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Check out our guys over at acemind.io, where I'm pulling the sim data from. And that's what it looks like now. So you can see it was essentially, a 3-point reduction. Oh, and let me put the new corrected numbers for Bane in there, because that's the old projection. So what, 35 This part's probably not worth doing, but whatever. Just want to have it correct. All right, so it was like a 2.5 point reduction. And it had a monster impact on his exposures. We're still getting them, but I feel like the new version is a lot more correct to what this slate actually looks like. And where the hell did he go? There he is. 37. That's not going to change anything except for changing those, except for just what we see here will be correct now. So yeah, big adjustment downward for Bane, and definitely seems a lot more correct. It's also level with the field, which tells me that it's pretty correct. And now we're getting just to the true value plays up at the top. We did have a bit of a reduction in Diabate, it looks like, on the FanDuel slate in that rerun. Came down to 6%. It's much more valuable on DK at 49. But definitely some corrections that went through there and some redistributions. Trey Murphy still looking like a huge piece on FanDuel, a lot less so on DraftKings. So I'll resort that. Let's get into it. So as usual, when we've got the split slates, gang, we've got the DraftKings. We're sorted by DraftKings exposures in our top 150. We've got the FanDuel stuff will pop up to the top over here, but we're going to filter by FanDuel positioning, trying to capture the slate for both sides as best as we possibly can. We'll stop here and there and make sure that we're capturing everybody, though. Let's see. I forgot I took a screenshot of that previous one. So as far as the changes that happened there, we had a jump. Oh, no, that's the same. We had a little jump in additional shares of Robert Williams. Handful of shares on the DK slate. He actually came down slightly on FanDuel, probably created some room positionally. No, doesn't really matter, but some interesting dynamics around the change that we popped in there for Desmond Bane. So let's get into the positioning. Talk this one through. Starting with guys who were differentiated over on the late games on FanDuel. Darren Fox, pretty nice late game piece. 8,900 point guard only on the FanDuel slate. You got 19% of him, a little bit above the field. I wouldn't mind 20, 25% of that. It also gives you a relatively expensive moving part in that late game. So there's 2 games in the 10 o'clock window on FanDuel. I wouldn't mind having a high price guy and like a medium price guy so that if something emerges, you can say, all right, let me grab the value and go up the board from somebody. So you always want to make sure you're locking in like 2 swaps when you've got those positions if you're playing for swaps. Generally just looks like a good option. Plays a lot of minutes. Got him at 38 tonight. He's been playing in that range, 37.8 on the season. Put up 43 and change on the FanDuel scale in 38 minutes the other night. Like him going right back to that range, 1.20 per minute. Cam Thomas at 15%, a little bit below the field. I'm fine being there. I'm fine also adding up a few additional shares being around the field on Cam. Scoring dependent player for sure, but he can get there from time to time. Cam Johnson's also been interesting lately. When those threes are going down, he's been a scoring monster. He hit like 9 of them the other day and just kind of bent the slate a little bit. SGA, 15% of him. Love taking player like that above the field and getting 2 fairly expensive point guard options in the late games. Again, I kind of want to make sure that I have other swappable spots because if you're just playing in the point guard range, you only have so many guys that would matter and you've already got the 2 most expensive guys there. So just watch what you're doing as far as playing for swaps. Dennis Schroeder comes up a little bit. Steph Curry comes up a little bit. A lot to work with there in the late game and the 2 late games amongst the guards on FanDuel. So, Dinwiddie, I don't think is anybody's idea of somebody that they really would want to get to under normal circumstances, but with the missing pieces in Dallas it seems highly likely that we're dealing with, I've got him at 30 minutes. I think that's reasonable. He played 27-9 the other day. He did put up a 32-5 on FanDuel. It's a very good productive day for Spencer Dinwiddie, who typically this year is playing at 0.65 on both sites. Last year was playing at 0.79. 13% usage, but presumably that goes up a little bit. And we've just got additional crunches now around Kyrie being questionable. Quentin Grimes is out. Luka's already out. Klay Thompson's questionable. So it's just endless opportunity for these guys. Anybody who's getting in the 25 minutes and above range for Dallas is going to be hitting the board a little bit. But Dinwiddie for 3,800 on FanDuel, we got him 60% of the time and level with the field for 3,300 on DraftKings. Unfortunately, I hate to tell you, 88% of the time in our top 150 lineups and way above the field over there. Field is aggressively high. I mean, the field is similar to that FanDuel ownership. I think it's in the 60s, but that is a big chunk of Spencer Dinwiddie. Jaden Hardy in the next spot down doesn't make it any more comfortable than Dinwiddie does, and the idea of putting those two guys together in lineups is just gross. Hardy, though, like I said, anybody mid-20s and up, especially at 3,900 on FanDuel, we got him 16%. On DraftKings, he's 3,700. He's also both guard spots eligible, 48%. Gently above the field on Hardy. So just hate going to super low rate guys like that who just continually let you down. Both guys this season so far have true shooting percentages in the 40s. They're both at least decent facilitators. 16.2% assist rate for Dinwiddie, 14.2% for Jaden Hardy. But I mean, those are some atrocious true shooting numbers. But we're getting to both guys, and Dinwiddie at 3,300 is providing a 7+ value score on DraftKings, 6+ on FanDuel. Hardy's right there, 5.35 FanDuel, 5.97 DraftKings. So you just need the value. But I hate the idea of, when I say I hate the idea, it's going to happen. We're going to see it a ton, and you should do it. It just makes me not feel good to see Dinwiddie and Hardy next to one another in an abundance of lineups. It's never going to make you feel good, but the value's there. The value's real. Jaylen Brown coming up significantly. 12% on FanDuel, not bad. 24%, level with the field on DK. I'd be happy to have a few additional shares of Jaylen Brown basically any time. James Harden on the other side of that game right next to him, though. Not bad. 114 per minute out of Brown, 131 per minute on the FanDuel scale out of Harden, 118 and 135 respectively on DK. We got less of Harden on FanDuel, and we got less of him relative to the field on FanDuel. At 24%, we are below the field on DraftKings, but it's gently below the field where it looks a little bit more aggressive on the FanDuel slate. Love Harden. Absolutely happy to take additional shares of him where I get them. Where I get them. But against Boston, it's not necessarily the best spot to throw guys into the grinder. But Harden's capable of, even in 27 minutes the other day, he put up a 36.4. That's not necessarily paying off a $9,400, $9,100 salary, but at least it's not a total, lineup breaker. You can at least make that work to put that thing in the money and still be all right with that lineup. And that's basically, the floor on Harden is around that. Timmy Hardaway, another player. At least he's not on Dallas. But it's another player who low rate, low usage, mediocre, lets you down way more often than not, but checks in today at 4,000. Shooting guard, small forward eligible. You can see Malik Beasley is on the very next line, so we're just getting these pairings of guys who are just benefiting from minutes from opportunity as far as, taking a few additional shots, playing some additional minutes. Timmy at 28 minutes, Malik Beasley at 32. Those are respectively 0.56 and 0.78 FanDuel, 0.60 and 0.84 performers per minute this year. You're getting shares of both of those guys. You're clicking them around. I'm just kind of happy that they're in the 30% range, 28 to 30% on FanDuel, and a little bit less than that on DraftKings. That's a situation where I think the ideal way to put those guys together is probably a 1-and-1, one of the Dallas guys, one of the Detroit guys, but the Dallas guys are both less expensive and more valuable to the slate than the two Detroit guys are. So you do, again, want to have combos of those two Dallas guys together. You can absolutely take combos of Timmy Hardaway and Malik Beasley. The minutes are going to be there. It's just feels like a situation with two unlikely guys who typically let you down that one gets there, one doesn't. On a per minute rate, Beasley is the better performer overall. That wasn't necessarily true last year, and that's the thing with these two players. Timmy was at 0.81, 0.66 for Malik Beasley. That's kind of flipped this season. Beasley on minutes, but his price is up a little bit compared to Timmy. Jaden Ivey also right there, but we got Brandon Miller in between. Miller just coming up in an is spot, 7,500 across sites, shooting guard and small forward eligible. We're getting him 14% of the time on FanDuel, 16% on DraftKings. He's not when I say is who he is, it's 4.92 value when we're looking for 5.5, 4.79 when we're looking for 5.0. That puts him right about, that means the price is appropriate. He's not showing extreme value, but he's not a bad play. He's a guy you can always put into a lineup when he's priced appropriately like this. this. It's just you build up with these plays first, you get your big men in, and then if you've got a spot lingering, Brandon Miller fits in fairly well. Not a bad option. 1.07 per minute on the season. FanDuel 111 per minute on DraftKings. So Ivy, just another guy at I give him 31.5. 6,800 both guard spots on FanDuel, 6,800 both guard spots on DraftKings. We got a chunk of them. 24%, 1 and 4 on the FanDuel slate, but below the field. Same thing on DraftKings, 16% and below the field over there. So 1.03 per minute performer on DraftKings, 0.99 per minute on FanDuel. There is nothing wrong with the play, but if he's getting popular, I think he's probably just getting boxed out because out of all those guys between Dallas and Detroit, he's the most expensive. So he's probably just getting boxed out while being perfectly fine and probably being the biggest upside player out of those guys. It is more like Jaden Ivey in a is who he is situation where it's different situations and different opportunities for all four of the guys up there. Or Timmy and Malik have been in those roles the last couple games, but it's still a different overall situation and their prices aren't fully adjusted for it. But again, Ivy's kind of like Miller. He's fine. If you get there and you've got that spot, it's just between the two, if you happen to have the money, I would probably go Miller. He's more expensive on both, but he's lower owned and he's a differentiation piece with the same or maybe even a little bit better of a ceiling. Bogdan's interesting. Played 26 the other day. If we continually get 26 out of Bogdan, he's going to be pretty good. Price is right. 5,000 on DK, 4,800 on FanDuel. Shooting guard and small forward eligibility. He's not great. I mean, he's 4.92 on 4.90 on DraftKings. So the value is not crazy. He's priced probably appropriately for this. But if he spikes more minutes, then there's a lot of upside for a guy who is, typically a 0.95 per minute player. So far this year, just 0.71 in his 4 games. Has been a little bit of a letdown so far, but he's just rounding into form, rounding into shape. And it's just one of those situations. You want to be ahead of the curve on spots like that. And even if he goes out and only plays the 26, he's probably going to be in this territory around a point per minute, which for the 48, for the 5,000, it's not going to hurt you. Bane, we already talked about. We adjusted him back down to a corrected rate and doesn't look great. Trey Murphy is a gigantically different piece across sites. Small forward and shooting guard eligibility for just 6,100 on FanDuel has him in 56% of our top 150 and looking like a killer piece. On DraftKings, 10%, a little bit below the field. He's 6,400 at both forward spots there, so he's a different fit on the slate, different fit for price. Not a mandatory piece by any means on DraftKings. You can get him and should still continue to play minutes. He played 38 the other night, even with pieces coming back. Looks pretty decent for the upside for continued usage. Maybe it trickles down a little bit from the 24, but I don't think we're going straight back to like league average usage yet. So for the 61 and the different positioning on FanDuel, he is an asset 56% of the time, and again, aggressively ahead of the field. Jalen Brunson just came up a little bit on FanDuel. We got him more on DraftKings. I don't mind this. 5+ value score is all right. Same shares of $4,400 Anthony Black. Same shares of $4,400 Cody Martin. Same shares of $4,600 Davion Mitchell. Any one of those guys, this is one of those situations where we got all three guys at like 10%. If you wanted to take more of a position on any one of those guys, go for it and just extract it from the other two. I think that's fine. Right here, Davion Mitchell's actually showing the best value score at 526 out of those three guys. So that's probably the way I would play it, but he's also 200 more than the other two are. But you do have a little bit of back and forth room among those three $4,400 guys. Unfortunately, you can't really work Jalen Brunson into that equation because he costs twice as much as two of those guys. But definitely a good upside piece. If there's no cat for the Knicks today, presumably Brunson will have to carry more of the scoring load. So it could be, it's a give and take there. As far as like, what does he lose out of the point guard side of it versus what does he gain out of being the scorer side of it? Suggs and Wendell both out. Okay. Furphy out. I had Wendell. Did I have Wendell in? I forget. Pretty sure I had them both in. I know I had Suggs in. Yeah, I did have Wendell in. All right. So we'll deal with that. Let me just knock the minutes out now in the other file real quick. So we've been dealing with the Wendell situation already. That won't be a problem. And let's see. So we'll see uptick for Black. And then some downboard minutes, like Cole Anthony will get on the board for a couple of minutes. Yeah, a few minutes. In terms of the guys who aren't projected currently. You'll see some Cole Anthony. You'll see some Caleb Houston. Minimal, though. I don't think either one of those guys is going to matter. The bigger impact will be two guys that were currently getting minutes, like Anthony Black. We'll go from, I had him at 26. He's probably going to jump into the 30s, which will make him now a very big value play. So that's definitely going to be interesting. Like Black was here already. He was 10%, so that makes him, we were just talking about those guys. That makes him significantly more valuable than the other two guys from that conversation, and I think it probably lofts him up into, maybe not quite this kind of territory, and he's more expensive than the two guys from Dallas, but it puts him probably in like Timmy Hardaway range, 4,000 there, 44 here. There's a little back and forth in that. And then among the big men, we kind of know what the impact is already on that one. But we'll see a little bit more for Goga. A couple more minutes for Mo. Probably a minute or two more for Jonathan Isaac than where I have him. So each one of those guys will gain ground as well. Hopefully, thanks for that, Power. Appreciate you. Hopefully everybody out there is doing well. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. A little low energy today. Haven't had any lunch for one thing. Starving. Also just fighting off the hangover demons. Had a few double IPAs at Thanksgiving yesterday. Fake Thanksgiving. Had a good time. Gets blurry toward the end. So let's see what else we got here to work with. Davion Mitchell, I was just talking about. KPJ on FanDuel at 27%, pretty aggressively ahead of the field at 4,600 with both guard spot eligibility. At 44, he was already just at 6% and an undercut to the field. And the fact that we're going to kick up the Anthony Black value and we've got all those other guys, I would have said that he would be another guy right in the mix with these guys. But I think most of this weight's just going to go to Black with the minutes change. So you're probably going to lose most of that. You're probably going to lose most of that. And we'll be all right with that. But any one of those guys in rotation, if you're taking down shares of Black or if you're taking down shares of Tim Hardaway, I think you're fine to go to any one of those options in that same $4,000 price range. Scoot, questionable. There's definitely some flux as far as Portland goes. I think it's going to be just more interesting around the big men and most specifically around Robert Williams. But there is some question in that Portland game. Right now, though, nobody looks like a critical piece. Anthony Simons just looking like an is-who-he-is situation. Scoot, if he goes, just didn't really come up. Onesie-twosie shares of both guys on DraftKings. More important on DraftKings. Mikal Bridges, we got a little bit on FanDuel. Same thing on DK. It's going to come up, I'm sure, with the usual situation for the Knicks with him, with OG, with Hart. Just a lot of minutes go to those guys, but they're all basically appropriately priced. Bridges is a guy who, keep your eye on. He's been underperforming as far as most of what we would expect from him for the season so far. So there is life there for a bounce back return to form. He's been playing at 0.76. That is on, about 5 points lighter usage. Doesn't need to handle as much scoring in New York as he did with Brooklyn. But he was a 0.94 player. There's a little bit more to give there. Played 32-6 and put up just 14 FanDuel points, so he owes us one. Trae Young, 5% FanDuel, 5% DraftKings. Mix and match piece from the high salary range. You can do a lot worse than having Trae pop up in a lineup. 1.23 per minute on FanDuel, 1.29 per minute on DraftKings. But an aggressively is-who-he-is kind of a spot, and with Dallas completely diminished, it might turn into a what does Trae really even need to do situation. But 37.5 minutes the other day, put up 56.7 FanDuel points. That is definitely on the board. Halliburton at 84, 81. Difficult to trust right now. One share of him in 150 on FanDuel, 4% on DraftKings. Mix and match piece from the upper mid-range. Josh Green, Derek White, color combo there. 4% for both guys on DraftKings. 0 and 4% on FanDuel. Don't really get any Green. Don't really get any White. Mix and match at worst. Either player capable of giving you an okay game. Green with plenty of minutes on the board, but he's a $4,500 player for a reason. He puts up 0.56 per minute this season on 10.5% usage, 0.66 last year on a little bit more opportunity. But just nobody really shining for Charlotte right now. And then Derek White, just, he's going to be directly in an is who he is situation. So you can get him. He's unlikely to let you down, but he's just priced perfectly for being Derek White in this spot. Ben Mathurin, no real love. We got a big chunk of Kyrie on the FanDuel slate. He's the one that's been lurking here as the outlier as we're looking at these differentiated boards. Currently questionable, so obviously we're keeping an eye on it. But right now at 35 minutes in the original projection, he's been playing at 113, but with everybody out, there's definitely upside for Kyrie to have a big day if he feels like it. 39.3 in the similar situation the other day. He put up just 37.8 FanDuel points, right around 1 per minute, which is kind of disappointing for Kyrie. But he's going to be the best player on the floor for Dallas. 31% undercut to the field on FanDuel, but we are getting our 5 value score from a significant per minute performer on the right day. That's not a bad spot to, maybe muscle back up toward 35%, get a little bit more. But 30% is a big enough chunk, honestly, that if that's below the field, I'm also okay with taking the position that the math is recommending. Was not relevant on DK. He's 97 on DraftKings. He's 9,000 on FanDuel. That's a stark price difference. 9% of Jalen Suggs, but he's off the board now. KCP at 5%, might pick up a little bit. He's just 4,200. Was already getting 30 minutes starters run, but maybe he just in the shuffle, I kick him to from 30 to 32 or something like that, and he gains a little ground. But KCP's never really going to, in this situation, pop off the board at that price. He's just a 0.59 player, 0.67 last year. Mix and match at best. 6% of Quentin Jackson, 7% of LaMelo Ball. LaMelo broke the slate the other day with 70 FanDuel points and 39.7. That team has no more big men at all, so just it's going to be small ball for right now for Charlotte. I mean, yeah, they got Taj and Diabate and stuff, but they're running short on big men. So presumably LaMelo with plenty to do out there. 138 per minute, just basically the same production as last year, but that's with a 6 percentage point uptick in his usage. So on any given slate, this could go bananas for scoring again if he's pulling that much usage. And he's also a good facilitator. He fills more than one category. So it's a definitely high-end player who doesn't exactly fit the slate well, but it's just like I was saying before, if you have additional shares of LaMelo today, it's not one to say like, oh, let me get those out of here. Brandon Ingram is out. I was kind of hoping we'd get that one. So that'll kick more minutes from where I had it for like all of essentially anybody who's active. I don't know how much more I give CJ than the 26 I've got him at right now, but we got to just redistribute 34 minutes there now. I already had Trey at 33, but he might pick up a couple just on like we need good NBA bodies. And then downboard, it'll just be like that Boston Hawkins Green group of players. Antonio Reeves probably gets back on the board for a handful of minutes at the bottom of the bench, but I don't think there's anything really there. But that's going to create additional shakeup and value for sure. Fun one. I hate this slate already. All right. So we'll deal with that. A lot of updates coming already. This is what happens when you start late, too. I hate late shows. Let me jump out of here because I'm just noticing also that it's already nearly 5:40, and we got to keep some pace so that I can update all this stuff. So let's go to the forward spot. So real quick, differentiated guys on the late game FanDuel slate. Right now, Zaire Williams is coming up quite a bit. He's a $4,000 small forward and kind of a unique value fit on FanDuel at that position right now. Jalen Williams coming up at 13%. We're under the field on him, but with emergent value and plenty of different spots to shuffle around. If you want to double that, go to like 25% and level off with the field. It's a very, very good player to do that with and should be dominant against Sacramento. 1.38 per minute on 26% usage. Love the upside for Jalen Williams. TJD coming up a little bit, 22% on the FanDuel slate. He just gets like 22 minutes a night. Played 23-3 the other day, put up 26.1 on the FanDuel scale. He's a 116 player for this season. At center and power forward, I do think there's upside there, and we're getting him a little ahead of the field. Even with the field on Jalen Wilson, even with the field on Domantas Sabonis, but you can always take a few additional Sabonis shares. Outside of that, nobody all that relevant. A couple shares of Draymond. Cam Johnson, definitely one that you could grab a couple additional shares on. Just, again, playing well. A little bit of a per-minute uptick overall. And when that three's going down, he's been dangerous lately. Again, Time Lord, looking like a beast. Ayton is technically doubtful, but it would be kind of shocking if DeAndre Ayton decided to play. This goes away if that's the situation, though. He would be just knocked back down to backup minutes. But right now, looking like the presumptive starter and looking like an easy bet to get 26. He's played 19-9. With upside into like the mid-upper 20s in his 6 games back. But outside of Dwap Reith, they're running out of big bodies there. So Time Lord on a per-minute sense, among the forward-eligible players, again going by FanDuel positioning, so it might be slightly different if you're resorted it by DraftKings. But his 138 is tied for the per-minute lead. With Jason Tatum. He is not Jason Tatum. Not by any long stretch of the imagination. But in a point per minute sense, he is a strong performer. 1.09 on just 12% usage last year. He's a good rebounder. He's an underrated facilitator. He's a good player. At 56 with center and power forward eligibility on FanDuel, you get him 62% of the time as a monster piece. 66% of the time with the same eligibility for 4,800 on DraftKings. Cheap per minute upside. And as those minutes get more secure and pile up, he becomes a better and better play. PJ and Najee both coming up in Dallas. A little bit less than the field of Najee at 18%, but we still got a big chunk. Same thing on DraftKings at 26%. He's 4,900 on DK with both forward spots. A little bit of value there, 5.45. That's approaching our value score, but there's a lot to work with, so we're not getting the monster share. But you could definitely have a little bit more or a little bit less, depending on what you're doing with similarly priced value guys across different positions. PJ looks a little more important. 31% is basically where the field is on him on DraftKings. 6,000 power forward only over there. 6,400 power forward only on FanDuel. We're getting him 32%, a little above the field there. Solid looking 5.28 value score. He's at about a point per minute, 0.99 per minute on the season. 39.8 in the overtime game the other day. Put up a 41.5. That's right around this, slightly above that kind of production. As long as the minutes continue to creep up, I like that spot a lot. And he's looking like a key piece from just the fair mid-range. Right? Not necessarily incorrectly priced for this spot. Jalen, we talked about with the guards. Same with Timmy. Jalen Johnson, power forward and small forward eligible on FanDuel at 89. We got him level with the field at 17%. Level with the field on DK for 83. Power forward only over there. A little bit more flex on FanDuel. Does at least make him a movable part. And that makes him interesting to me on the FanDuel slate. But that fit as far as price goes, I feel like we're going to land a lot of the time, like if you're just mixing and matching some of these value pieces to see what spots you could leave open with a lot of salary. I feel like a lot of the time we would end up with either a little bit less than he costs left over with one forward spot open, or a little bit more than he costs, and we would want to go to Tatum. We would want to take a value play and go to a Timmy or something like that. So might just be losing shares in the shuffle on both Jaylen Brown and Jalen Johnson. They both came up more significantly, but again, just level with the field on DK, 82-83. Differentiated positioning across those two players. So if you're getting them together, they land kind of well together in lineups, and they're both 40-point projections with upside for more. So Jaylen Brown from the Boston side, Jalen Johnson from the Atlanta side, both at least looking like decent enough parts. Beasley and Brandon Miller we talked about. Derek Jones, 0.78 per minute this season on a little bit of increased usage. Still no Norm Powell there. Obviously still no Kawhi and everybody trying to carry the load a little bit as far as creating points. At 46, he's just okay. Didn't really come up much on FanDuel. Puts him a sub-5 value score. At 39 on DraftKings, he's a much more important piece. 16%. The field's probably in the low 20s, 22, 25, somewhere around there. We do have a ton of value to work with. So I don't know how much we need to go crazy for a $3,900 power forward option when we're probably just putting a lot of better players in that spot. But he's definitely there. He's a rotational piece at worst for some of those value spots. So if you come up with a little bit more or a little bit less of Derek Jones, as long as there's, a visible, that guy's the same value play and that's where those shares went, I think you're probably fine. Ingram's off the board, which is a shame because we were getting a lot of them on FanDuel at nearly 30%. But we won't worry about that spot. It's going to open up more value in New Orleans. Tatum, significant piece. 13% on FanDuel, happy to have him. 12%, happy to have him on DK. 138 FanDuel, 143 on DraftKings per minute this season. 10-4, 10-2, definitely a big expensive piece, but one of the ones that's well worth paying for. Looks like a good option where we'll probably be able to get to more of him now with some of the values and then some of the mid-range guys. I was just talking about Jalen Johnson and his fit, and I wasn't thinking about Brandon Ingram in that. That would be interesting. If we're going to lose this 30%, how much of that goes to Jalen Johnson? How much of that goes to Jaylen Brown? So that's a reasonable pivot. Most specifically probably with that shared small forward and only a $100 price difference. On FanDuel, those Ingram shares are probably going to Jaylen Brown. On DraftKings, 87-82, that would be an easy transition. And actually having Ingram be more expensive than both Jaylen Brown and Jalen Johnson on DraftKings is one, a choice, and two, makes it very easy to move those shares. So I think this 12% probably sinks directly into those two players and gives you a little bit to work with salary-wise. So that's a good pivot there. But Tatum, if you can find a way to spend some of those shares by going from there to here instead and taking Tatum, he's obviously the best per-minute performer and the superstar among those three excellent players. Bogdan we talked about, could be a little bit sneaky, might not be today, but one of these days he's going to be. Des Bane we talked about, Trey Murphy we talked about, Cody Martin. 10% of Tobias Harris, feels right. 6,700, both forward spots on FanDuel. 6,200 power forward only on DraftKings. Just a 4.74 value score on the FanDuel slate. At 62 on DK, 500 less. He's giving you a little bit more value there. But the field's there. And he's just a mediocre option. Seeing less usage, but there's a uptick, obviously, with no Cade. This is an uptick for everybody in Detroit. We're already getting so much Detroit in the mix, and he's just kind of priced, even if he goes out and puts up instead of the 0.92, if he goes out and gives you a point per minute, if he gives you 1-1, you're probably not getting a ceiling game here. I just don't think that price or positioning works that well, so that's why we're getting less. We're closer to the field. Our undercut to the field is closer to the field on DK. This is a little bit harder of an undercut just looking at the shading there. But we're under the field on both sides on Harris. RJ, not really coming up. Happy to have him if I can get there. 5%, 8%, just another good mid-range player. But at 87, again, we're probably just getting into some shares of Jalen up there. Pascal Siakam, 1% FanDuel, 6% DraftKings. Another player, decent top-end value, 7,400 on FanDuel at power forward. It's getting kind of cheap. If he goes back to that 115 from last year, you're going to want to have him on the day that he does. And just less and less challenge against from New Orleans right now in that game. Bridges we talked about. Saloon, I got him at 20 minutes. He's only 3,700. Another, larger body for Charlotte right now. One share and a pretty hard undercut to the field on FanDuel. 6% pretty hard undercut for just 3,300 on DraftKings. I think just getting gobbled up by other similarly priced value guys at other positions, and then just the need to spend money and take some stars at the forward spots. Mix and match value at best. If you see the projection go up from this just slightly under 15 to more like a 17, 18 kind of a range, it just means I gave him a few more minutes, and anything like that would increase his value. If you see an increase in projection, increase your shares because he got more valuable. Scotty Barnes, Brandon Clark, Josh Hart just kind of are who they are spots. 15% of Barnes, 10% of Clark on FanDuel. Less of both guys on DraftKings. But definitely, a few shares here and there. And every guy in that list is better than a, dart throw type of a player. Everybody's in the 0.87 or above range. But 2 out of those 3 guys, fairly low usage. Scotty Barnes just kind of rounding back into form. Put up a solid 47.9 in 34.1 minutes the other day, though. Got him projected right in that territory. Green, Coffee, Matherin, there's nobody really important in that group. Any of these guys from the 3, 4, 5 range that isn't already drawing monster value shares. If you get a couple of them, it's okay. If you get a big majority of them as you look at your lineups, it's probably not right. Denny is in that group. Jeremy Grant is in that group. I wouldn't mind having more Franz than we got to. Franz is not in that group. Franz is a player you can enthusiastically take more of so far this season. Look at the monster uptick in performance. 1.34 per minute, up from 1.05 last year. Huge uptick. De Silva getting some decent run in the starting lineup, but not really coming up as a piece where he's priced. Nobody looks all that relevant down here on DK. We got 10% of Jaren Jackson Jr. We're always happy to have Triple J in our lives. 1.34 per minute on FanDuel this year, 1.20 last year, so a little bit of an uptick there. Obviously, that Memphis team is just a mess as far as who's available, who's playing what every given night. But one of the steady points is typically Triple J. 28.7 minutes on average. He played just 26 the other day. I've got him at 28, right back around his average tonight. In that 26 the other day, he put up a 41.8. He is an excellent per minute performer. So not a terrible way to spend some salary, some shares on FanDuel. We didn't get him at all on DraftKings, but it's 79 at power forward. If you want to swap him into a few spots, it's fine. Nobody else is relevant down this way. Brian Kazorian's here. Brian's saying, I'm remembering when Porzingis returned last season and absolutely smashed in that game in about 27 minutes. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily laser in on like that is why you would want to go there, that he did it last time he returned from an extended injury. I would just more say like if the Celtics are willing to put him out there, then I am too for a little bit as long as the price is right. But I've gotten just at like 18 today. I think it's going to be kind of a gentle easing in. But given the missing pieces, maybe not. Cornette out, maybe we'll just need to lean on him a little bit and put him back into like the 26-minute range. There he is. So we didn't get him at all. Oh, that's going to kill the time. I forgot it was unfiltered. We didn't get him at all on either site. But he's only 7,000 on FanDuel. He's 7,700 on DK. But like considering that we didn't get any shares of Jaren Jackson at 79 at the power forward. Yeah, it's a center versus a power forward. Let's see if there's a comparable. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll deal with it when we get to centers in a second. My point was going to be that it's not necessarily just off of the fact that he did it last year when he came back. It's off of the fact that when healthy, Kristaps Porzingis is an excellent per minute player. 1.29 per minute last year, 24.7% usage rate for just 7,000. That would have some value if we could have security of even those 26 minutes that you're mentioning. But definitely, there's the opportunity opening up for him to play that. Hopefully we'll get some coach speak just on what the situation looks like for him. Let me jump to centers. We'll swing back around on Kristaps. So again, it's a monster opportunity to just have some Robert Williams in your life. He's got power forward eligibility today on both sites, which is tremendous. 4,800 on DraftKings, great price. 5,600 on FanDuel, honestly. Willing to eat the price bump over there. It's coming up like crazy, 62.6% of the time. We talked about him already, but just to reiterate, he is a fantastic per-minute player when healthy, and right now putting up some numbers when he's getting his time. And with all the missing pieces in the front court for Portland, very likely to play up mid-20s with possibility into the upper 20s. I wouldn't say more than 30 minutes, but 28 minutes isn't crazy. 30 minutes on the nose, maybe not crazy if you projected him that way. I wouldn't project him that way, but the upside's there. And he helps you buy Nikola Jokic right next to him. 38.6% and above the field on Jokic on FanDuel? Absolutely. Anytime you can get above the field. And look at the share on DraftKings, 60%. Nicely above the field. He's 12,000 on DK. Got some great options there in a per minute sense. A cheap Diabate at 49. 33% exposed. He's been playing at 0.94 per minute on DraftKings. Good enough for my money. 0.98 on FanDuel. With the idea that now no Grant Williams there, they're going to need to play him additional minutes. So love the per minute upside potential there. And the idea that you get all three of those guys together, because you can go center util, and then you just slot power forward for Robert Williams. That's a solid little block of two super cheap value guys, and those guys directly pay for Nikola Jokic. And now you've just got locked in front court value there. I like that quite a bit. If you want to work some Miles Turner into your life, assuming he plays, that's perfectly fine on DraftKings. 1.02 per minute. It's kind of an is who he is price. 67 on FanDuel, same thing. 17% of them on the FanDuel slate. Perfectly fine. But the per minute value has come down. He was 1.22 last year, 1.02 per minute so far this year. So there's a dip, but it's kind of correctly priced for that dip in production. If Cat goes, you can always grab some additional shares of Karl Anthony Towns. Right now, it's just 5% on DK, or on FanDuel rather, not really coming up. But if I can take an edge on Karl Anthony Towns, where this tells me that the field's in the 5% range, so let me double that. Let me grab 10, 12%. And quite honestly, if I'm sacrificing shares of Miles Turner, obviously it's Miles Turner and something else because there's a big price difference there. But if I can take these shares, get Cat in the 12 to 15 range, be above the field on a play like him, who's a 1.44 per minute player this year. 1.15 last year. It's probably the truth is somewhere in between. But as long as he takes the court, and especially if people are not going to be there, that's a very high-end player to be able to take that kind of position against single-digit ownership. It's just what does it impact to your, Jokic exposure. Jokic, definitely the better choice. 16% of Cat on the DraftKings slate with just more maneuverability across those guys. Looks pretty great there. I think that's appropriate, but if you wanted to be in the 20-25 range if he plays, that's also fine. It's not exactly the same situation, though, because we know the field is going to be 18-20% on DK. So it's knowing the field is going to be in single digits here is intriguing, where this would just be like leveling off to the field, which, again, perfectly fine. Zubac, a little below the field there, a lot more below the field there. Good per minute option with upside, 33 minutes at 7,200. Just getting boxed out for shares, I think, by that. Same deal over here. Just more value going into those guys. But this is a reasonable pivot from, let's say you want to take for 300 more some of those Miles Turner shares away. Getting your way back to the field on a player like Zubac, worth it. Or potentially worth it, not a mistake. But I think the interesting situation there would be if you're going away from those $6,700 Turner shares is probably just to buy more of these three guys because of how stellar that looks. But either Turner or Zubac, easily on the slate, more of a fit on DraftKings. Jalen Duren didn't really get much, 5% FanDuel, 6% DK. Same situation as Turner. Closer price fit maybe, cheaper by a wide margin on FanDuel. Maybe more ease of pivoting those shares around. But again, I'd rather just have bigger chunks of those guys and less of him. Clark, 10%. That's fine at 4,200, honestly, on FanDuel. Not a major minutes contributor. 0.87 per minute so far this year on just 13% usage. Just played 16 minutes a game, but upside for additional minutes with missing bodies yet again. 42 on DK, 5%. He's a mix and match piece at best. There's no reason to get excited about the spot, but there's plenty of potential there. Clint Capella, 3%, 5%, not an overly relevant piece. Jakob Poeltl, good player, not really coming up. Just, again, another guy probably just a good per minute player. 1.23 per minute so far this year for just 7,800. I feel like he's probably just getting boxed out by how much a Joker we're getting to. A lot of Joker on the board. That's a reasonable one. 67, 78. It's not exactly a great price pivot. If you can find the $1,100 to go from a Turner share to a Poeltl share in a couple of lineups, level this back to the field and maybe undercut a little Turner, that's fine, but you're also, doing something else at another position to get there. I do like Pirtle in a per minute sense, though. Very good player. On DraftKings, was not relevant at 8%. Goga is going to see increased value, but his price is kind of more corrected for the value that he's going to have. We didn't really get him here. We'll probably get him in a rerun after the uptick in minutes, but not ideal. But again, if you weren't here before, no Wendell Carter Jr. yet again, so Goga probably a couple few additional minutes. This is right around what he's actually been playing in this situation a lot of the time, though. Keep an eye on the Pacers, just because that situation gets messy in a hurry if some of these guys don't go, and it immediately leads to TJ McConnell value. We saw it explode the other day. Right now, Jarris Walker was the guy I was looking at, and I scrolled and lost him in the shuffle here. There he is. 0% on both sites in the mid-4s. We talked about Triple J. That's about it as far as those downboard guys go. No real differentiation. Let me make sure. I'll put everybody on the board here. Make sure there's nobody who got accidentally left out by sorting with FanDuel positioning. And then we'll get out of here and make sure that I get a 6 o'clock update in the next couple minutes. PJ we talked about. Timmy. I think we got all these guys. I don't see any outliers to the board. This is your full slate. So you can see, monster shares going in like this direction for the guys that are 20 and up. That is your quote-unquote core. And then just everybody else, just movable parts, but a lot of movable parts. And this is we already know that what we've been talking about has been changed, right? So get ready for this to be completely different. The 6 o'clock show, completely different from the 5 o'clock show. Don't forget to tip your waitress, so on and so forth. I think that's going to wind things up. Callie K. Alley. Thoughts on Gary Harris starting for Orlando? Low per minute player. That was the Suggs coming off the board. So yeah, I'll have to do a little juggling with minutes as far as like where Anthony Black was, where Gary Harris was. Between those two guys, I greatly prefer Anthony Black. You can see Gary Harris last year 0.59 per minute, this year 0.51 per minute, but he is so cheap at 3,300, at 3,700 that if you just swap him into like 26 and change minutes there, he's going to see similar value to, better than this. Not quite, I don't think, those Dallas guy values, but he would be somewhat comparable in that, Spencer Dinwiddie, those Dallas values are not exactly great per minute players in and of themselves, right? Dinwiddie, 0.65, 0.79. Jaden Hardy, 0.68 this year. So it would be comparable-ish value because he's similarly priced, but definitely not my favorite player to have spring up for sudden value. Trey saying my Cowboys can't even tank right. Need a top 3 pick. Yeah, my Giants got tanking figured out. You just need a, I don't know, total mess of a roster. You need to hand the reins to Tommy DeVito. That is the recipe for losing football games, my friend. You need to have your best player and one of the best players in the NFL playing on your division rival Philadelphia Eagles now instead of your team. That's how you tank a season. No NFL show, Trey. We're just basically already out of time, and I got to handle NBA here. But projections are up. Projections will be updated. We can chat about it in Discord and everything. Barkley is definitely unreal. My Philly fan buddy texted our group yesterday. Just I am out of superlatives for Saquon Barkley. Like, never realized how good he was watching him. I did. I knew what we had. Worst. Hometown kid, hate the Eagles, can't hate him. I also hate the Eagles, love Saquon. And actually, this Eagles team, I have a very healthy respect for. I think they're a good team. Anyway, let me punch out of here. And, you watched him in high school? Oh, wow. Very cool. I remember seeing him when he got drafted. We went to one of those, like, Giants are introducing the rookies to ticket holders, and the girl I was with at the time, her father was a season ticket holder, so we had access to the event. We're right down front, and they called him out. And like, I remember him walking out on stage and just like staring at his calf, and how his calf is essentially like the size of my torso. Like, dude is ridiculous. No wonder he can jump like 11 feet in the air, up and over a guy backward. 10 minutes from you. Very cool. But yeah, let me punch out of here. That's an hour on the nose, guys. Let me get this update in. A lot of changes coming. I would go through Ace Mine lineups, but they're going to look completely different already, so no real point in doing that. Probably better to sink that time into an update. Check out rotoscouts.com, rotoscouts.com. I can say the name of my own website. Everything's under $1 a day. Access to NFL for tonight's showdown slate, NBA for this slate, and NHL for the big 11-game NHL slate. Projections are all up right now, and they're live, and they're going to get an update on NFL and NBA in the next little bit. For anybody wondering, by the way, somebody did reach out to me and ask, this board that you guys can see, this is entirely cosmetic. What your purchase is the access to the projections. You know, me running minutes, running the projections and everything for all the different sports. You're not actually buying this board. I think that's typically somewhat clear. But this is just for show purposes. And there would be no value to giving you this, because you would just have to update it by running the sims on AceMind and pulling the data. So this isn't what you get. But all the data and content that feeds this is what you get. This is just so that I can have something to show you guys as I talk through the slate. Just want to make sure that's abundantly clear for everybody. You guys absolutely rock. Hit the like button on your way out the door. If you were just listening an hour or so behind, thank you very much. Glad you're here, and hit the like button. But that's it, guys. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We'll be back tomorrow for an NBA slate. And then what is it? It's NBA tomorrow, I think, is lighter. And then it's like Pandemonium on Wednesday, no games Thursday, and then Pandemonium again on Friday. Should be fun. We'll deal with that when we get there. See you tomorrow, guys.